There's a good chance something is growing in your yard right now that is going to cost you 5 figures by the time you're 70. Stick around, because in the next few minutes I'm going to walk you through 17 backyard features that get sold to homeowners as smart upgrades and quietly turn into structural damage, dead gardens, and repair bills nobody warned you about. If even one of these is already in your yard, hit subscribe now, because you're going to want to see what's coming for it. Every single one of these 17 was marketed to you as an upgrade, low maintenance, modern, a smart investment in your property. None of that turned out to be true, and after decades of watching these features fail, I can tell you exactly why and exactly what to plant or build instead. Let's start at number 17. Number 17, hollow resin fake rock covers. The hollow resin rock, the fake boulder landscapers use to hide a wellhead or an irrigation valve without ruining the look of the yard. On installation day it looks convincing enough. Give it a few summers of direct sun and the resin starts to fade into a chalky, plastic-looking grey that nothing in nature actually looks like. Wind knocks it out of place after a storm, and instead of hiding the utility box, it draws the eye straight to it. Worse, when a utility worker actually needs to get to that valve in a hurry, the fake rock is often in the way, sitting under a layer of mulch or half buried in soil that built up around it over the years, adding time and frustration to a repair that should have taken minutes. What to use instead? A low, discreet planting screen around the real utility box, or if you want something solid, an actual stone cover that weathers the way stone is supposed to instead of chalking. Number 16, open rafter wooden pergolas. People build these over a patio expecting an instant outdoor room. Here's what nobody explains at the lumber yard. Flat, open slats give you almost no real protection from sun or rain, so the structure ends up being more decorative than functional. Meanwhile, years of direct ultraviolet light and pooling rainwater on those horizontal beams start warping the wood, peeling the paint, and rotting the joints from the inside out. That means scraping and repainting every few years for as long as you own the thing. And climbing a ladder to do it gets a lot less appealing in your 60s than it was in your 30s. Most homeowners end up hiring someone else to do that scraping and repainting within 10 or 15 years, turning what was sold as a one-time build into a recurring line item on the budget. If you want shade that actually works long-term, look at a solid or louvered roof pergola that sheds water instead of collecting it. Number 15, dry-laid DIY stone pathways. The weekend project where flat stones get set straight into dirt or a thin layer of sand with no real base underneath. Without a properly compacted aggregate base and a fabric layer below it, every stone in that path is free to shift with the ground. Freeze and thaw cycles heave them out of alignment year after year, and what started as a charming path turns into an uneven surface that is a genuine trip hazard, especially for anyone whose balance isn't what it used to be. Weeds also push straight up through the gaps between shifting stones almost immediately, and once a few stones start rocking underfoot, most homeowners just live with it rather than tearing the whole path back up to fix it properly. Do it right the first time. Same stones, but set over a real compacted base, or mortared in place if you want it to stay put for good. Number 14, in-ground automatic sprinkler systems. Sold as hands-off watering for life, the install alone usually runs somewhere between $3,000 and $8,000, and that's just the beginning. A good year of upkeep might cost you around $400 in service. A bad year, when a line freezes and bursts because the system wasn't blown out properly before winter, can run $1,200 or more. I know a homeowner who put this system in back in her 30s and is still paying for service calls in her 70s, on a controller that nobody in the house remembers how to program anymore, with sprinkler heads that now spray sideways into the driveway instead of the lawn. If you want low-effort watering that doesn't come with a maintenance contract, run a soaker hose through the vegetable bed, plant drought-tolerant natives in the borders that mostly water themselves, and keep a hose handy for everything else. Number 13, pea gravel and loose aggregate beds. The small round stones people spread as a low-maintenance ground cover between beds or along a path. It photographs beautifully. It behaves terribly. Loose stone doesn't interlock with anything, so it slowly migrates into the lawn, where a mower blade can launch it as an actual projectile, and it works its way underfoot as a real ankle hazard for anyone over 60. Leaves and pine needles fall into the gaps between the stones and decompose right there, creating a nutrient-rich layer that fuels exactly the weeds the gravel was supposed to prevent in the first place. Underneath it all, the undisturbed, moisture-holding pockets become a favorite spot for ants, spiders, and mice, often right against your foundation. And once weeds do root down through the gravel, pulling them means the roots wrap around individual stones, so you end up hand-picking rocks out of the soil along with every weed you remove. Instead, try flagstone with creeping thyme growing in the joints, decomposed granite that actually compacts and stays where you put it, or a simple path of mowed grass. Number 12, phototoxic and pathogenic flora. This one is about the plants themselves rather than the hardscaping. Common rue gets sold as a fragrant, old-fashioned cottage garden herb. What the plant tag leaves out is that its sap contains compounds that react with sunlight on contact with skin, and that reaction causes real chemical burns, the kind that take weeks to heal and can leave dark marks on the skin for years afterward. Children are especially vulnerable to this. Morning glory has its own problem. It's a fast-growing, pretty annual vine that escapes cultivation easily and carries fungal disease. When the dried, infected vines finally get pulled out at the end of the season, they release a cloud of fungal spores that spreads the problem through the rest of your garden and can irritate anyone breathing it in. Neither of these problems shows up on the plant tag at the garden center, which is exactly why they catch so many homeowners off guard years into owning the plant. Skip both. There are plenty of fragrant herbs and flowering vines that don't come with a burn warning or a spore cloud attached. Number 11, large-scale edible gardens. The sprawling vegetable garden that takes over a huge section of the backyard. In the first few seasons, it feels incredibly productive and satisfying. The problem is the labor curve. Daily watering, constant weeding, ongoing soil building, and pest control add up fast, and most homeowners hit real burnout on that workload somewhere between year 3 and year 5, long before the garden has finished paying them back. The moment a plot like that gets neglected, even for a single season, aggressive weeds move in within weeks, and raccoons, deer, and rodents follow right behind them, which does more damage to your curb appeal than an empty bed ever would. The irony is that the garden usually gets bigger over the years, not smaller, because every spring feels like the right time to add one more bed, right up until the labor catches up all at once. Scale it down instead. A few well-built raised beds or containers, sized to what you can actually maintain for the next 20 years, not just this summer. Number 10, oversized evergreens near the foundation. The evergreen shrub planted 6 inches from the wall because it looks small and manageable in its nursery pot. Give it 15 or 20 years and a plant like a Nellie Stevens holly or a large juniper develops thick woody stems and a wide root system that traps moisture directly against your siding, rots the wood underneath it, scratches your window glass, and blocks light from an entire side of the house. Cutting it back hard to reclaim the space usually exposes bare interior wood that never grows leaves again, which means removal ends up being the only real fix. The lesson is simple. Plant for the shrub's true mature width, the number on the tag, not the size of the pot it came in. Number 9, monolithic concrete patios. The poured concrete patio, sold as the clean, modern, permanent option. Concrete is anything but flexible. Freeze and thaw cycles crack it eventually no matter how many control joints get cut into the pour during installation. It also acts like a giant heat sink, holding surface temperatures above 130 degrees Fahrenheit in direct summer sun, and it stains permanently from oil, rust, and organic debris. Once it finally cracks, sinks, or shifts, removing it alone runs around $8,500, and a full replacement surface adds another $12,000 on top of that. And because it's poured as one continuous slab, a crack in one corner usually means the whole surface has to come out, not just the damaged section. A better long-term option is sand-set flagstone or paver brick. Both can be repaired one section at a time instead of demolished whole. If any of these first 9 sound a little too familiar, that's exactly why I'd ask you to subscribe right now, so the next one lands before you make the same call in your own yard. Let's keep going, because the next few get more serious. Number 8, synthetic woven landscape fabric. The black woven weed cloth laid under mulch, and this might be the most quietly destructive item on this whole list. For the first year or two, it genuinely works, which is exactly why it keeps getting recommended. Underneath the surface, though, it blocks the gas exchange and water movement your soil needs to stay alive, and the microorganisms down there slowly suffocate until the soil turns compacted and lifeless. Windblown seeds still land on top of the fabric, root straight through the weave, and become nearly impossible to pull without tearing the material apart. Meanwhile, the roots of the shrubs you actually planted grow sideways along the barrier searching for oxygen, sometimes wrapping around their own base in the process. Gardeners are still digging up intact fabric from beds that were installed decades ago, tangled permanently into the roots of plants that died years before. Every attempt to dig it out at that point means cutting it apart with a utility knife, section by section, and accepting that some of it is simply staying in the ground for good. Skip it entirely. Plain cardboard broken down under 3 inches of natural shredded mulch suppresses weeds just as well and feeds your soil instead of sealing it shut. Number 7, artificial synthetic turf. Marketed as a permanently green lawn with zero mowing required. Because it can't cool itself the way real grass does through transpiration, its surface temperature can run 40 to 70 degrees hotter than natural lawn, regularly climbing past 130, sometimes 160 degrees Fahrenheit in direct sun. That is hot enough to burn bare feet and paws on a normal summer afternoon. The plastic backing also breaks down under ultraviolet light over time, shedding microplastic particles into the soil and nearby waterways for as long as it stays installed. It has a real lifespan too, somewhere between 10 and 20 years, and when it finally fails, removing and disposing of it has to go through a specialty facility, which is not cheap since the material can't just go out with the regular yard waste. If you want a lawn that actually stays cool and green with far less effort than people assume, look at a clover and fine fescue blend. It needs very little water or fertilizer and feeds pollinators when it blooms. Number 6. Railroad tie retaining walls. This one carries a health risk that most homeowners have never even heard mentioned. Railroad tie retaining walls were everywhere from the 1970s through the early 2000s, built from heavy black timbers treated with creosote. Creosote is a confirmed carcinogen, and it leaches into the surrounding soil and water for the entire life of the timber, which is exactly why its use in residential landscaping is now restricted. Nothing edible should ever be grown in soil next to one of these walls. On top of that, termites are drawn to the slowly decaying wood, and these walls tend to fail on a predictable schedule, usually somewhere between 15 and 20 years after installation. I know of a homeowner who inherited a railroad tie wall from the previous owner of her house, watched it finally collapse decades later, and paid just over $8,000 for the replacement and the soil cleanup that came with it. If you need a retaining wall, natural stacked stone or concrete block faced with a stone veneer will outlast you without leaving anything behind in the soil. Number 5. Deeply sited water gardens and koi ponds. The backyard koi pond, sold as the peaceful centerpiece every yard needs. The flexible liners used in most builds last roughly 15 to 25 years before a root, a burrowing rodent, or a shifting rock punctures them, and those leaks are notoriously hard to trace once they start seeping. Fallen leaves and fish waste load the water with organic material, which triggers algae blooms and eventually turns the whole pond stagnant, smelly, and a breeding ground for mosquitoes. And if the pond isn't secured, raccoons and herons will find it, and a single nighttime visit from either one can wipe out an entire stocking of fish. I've seen an $8,000 to $12,000 koi pond look absolutely spectacular for less than a year before the local wildlife found it and cleaned it out. Restocking fish after a raid like that only invites the same predators back, so most owners end up either fencing the whole pond or giving up on fish altogether within a few years. A shallow wildlife basin refilled by hose, or a small walled masonry trough with a simple container fountain, gives you the same calming water sound with no fish, no pump, and no predator visits. Number 4. Monolithic leyland cypress hedges. The privacy hedge planted in a long identical row because it grows fast and delivers real privacy within about 4 years. The problem shows up later, usually between years 15 and 25, when canker or needle blight moves through the hedge. Because every tree in that row is genetically identical and sharing the same root zone, whatever disease infects one tree takes down the entire line within 2 or 3 growing seasons, leaving huge brown gaps that never fill back in. These trees also have shallow root systems, which makes a mature, top-heavy hedge genuinely vulnerable to toppling in a serious storm, close enough to a house or a power line to cause real damage when it goes down. Replacing a full-grown hedge like that means starting your privacy screen over from scratch, which can take another decade before it fills back in the way the original did. A mixed hedge holds up far better. Rotate in holly, viburnum, arborvitae, and eastern red cedar, so that one species failing doesn't take your entire privacy screen down with it. Number 3. In-ground swimming pools. The novelty is real for the first several years, and then the maintenance cycle becomes permanent. Chemical balancing, daily skimming, and the electricity to keep the filtration pump running never stop costing money, and over a 40-year span of ownership, the major components, the liner, the plaster, the coping, the heater, all eventually need full replacement at real expense. By the time a home goes up for sale, an agging pool more often works against the seller than for them, since a lot of buyers see it as a safety liability and an ongoing maintenance burden rather than a selling point. That leaves plenty of owners footing decades of upkeep on a feature the market may not even reward them for when they eventually sell. A modular wooden deck built around a real seating and gathering area gives you the outdoor living space people actually want, without decades of chemicals and pump repairs. Number 2. Invasive running bamboo and aggressive rhizomatous ground covers. Running bamboo, along with aggressive spreaders like English ivy, vinca, and pachysandra, usually planted as a fast, cheap privacy screen or a quick fix for a bare, shady slope. Underground, running bamboo rhizomes can travel dozens of feet in a single growing season, easily cracking concrete, lifting pavers, and pushing straight through standard landscape barriers like they aren't even there. English ivy climbs masonry walls, trapping moisture against them, breaking down the mortar joints, and if it's allowed to climb a mature tree, it can smother the canopy until the added weight brings the whole tree down in a storm. Both of these spread across property lines constantly, and several states now have laws that let a neighbor bill you directly for the cost of removing it from their land. I know of a homeowner who planted just 6 bamboo starts as a screen against a neighbor's air conditioning unit, and years later found himself in mediation with 2 different neighbors, with professional eradication quoted between $10,000 and $15,000. If you want that fast-growing screen look, plant clumping bamboo instead of running varieties, or choose native ground covers like foamflower, Allegheny spurge, and wild ginger, all of which stay exactly where you put them. And number 1, major shade trees planted with insufficient setback. The feature that costs the most and takes the longest to show its true damage. The shade tree, a maple, an oak, a sweet gum, planted just 15 feet from the foundation because that's where it fit and it looked harmless as a sapling. A mature tree's root system spreads roughly 1.5 times the width of its own canopy, which means that 15-foot planting spot is quietly signing you up for trouble that won't show up for 30 years. Moisture-seeking roots infiltrate sewer mains, breach septic lines, push driveways sideways, and lift concrete slabs right off their base. By year 30 to 40, the foundation and plumbing repair bills that follow typically run between $8,000 and $14,000 per incident, and if the tree eventually has to come out near the house or a power line, removal alone can cost more than $20,000. Setback that felt generous at 35 becomes a 30-year sentence nobody remembers agreeing to. The fix is simple and it costs nothing extra. Give large shade trees a 30-foot minimum setback from the foundation, 40 feet if you're planting silver maple, willow, or cottonwood specifically, or choose a smaller structural tree instead, like an eastern redbud, a serviceberry, or a flowering dogwood, all of which give you real shade without the root spread that eventually comes for your house. And that's all 17. The expensive decisions in a yard are never the ones you notice at 35. They're the ones still sending you bills at 70, long after you've forgotten why you made the call in the first place. Garden for the person you're actually going to be in 20 years, not just the yard you want to show off this summer. None of these 17 mean you can't have the fire pit, the water feature, or the shade tree you've always wanted. It just means choosing the version that ages the way you will, instead of the version that ages against you. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 17 is already sitting in your own yard right now, and where are you gardening from? Drop your state or your country in the comments below, because I'm putting together a map of exactly where these regrets show up most, and that map is going to be the next video in this series. If this saved you from a decision you were about to make, subscribe before you go, and I'll see you in the next one.